Hi, you guys. Welcome to A Lot of You Have Been Asking. I am so excited for this episode. I am joined by a very special guest, a fellow content creator, Paige Connell. You might know her as she is a page turner, and she is absolutely like turning the page on social media. You talk a lot about motherhood and childcare and raising children in today's world. And I'm just really excited to chat with you because I feel like you have a really unique perspective when it comes to social media and content creation in general. Before we get into that, I kind of want to know, tell me about your social media journey. How did you start posting and sharing your life?
Sure. So I was much more of a social media lurker.
Yeah.
Right? I downloaded TikTok in 2020 like everyone else did when we were trapped in our homes. But I would never comment on a video. I would never
Totally.
barely even liked a video, right? I was just consuming. But in 2022, I can't remember, I worked at an e-commerce apparel business, and we were using TikTok for marketing, and we were trying to learn about the algorithm. And so one day at home, I was like, I'm gonna post a video, and I'm just gonna see what happens. And so I created my handle, and that was when everybody's handles were punny.
No, yeah,
which is why my handle is what it is.
Same.
And so I wasn't thinking about it.
No.
I was like, oh, this will just be a funny play on words. And so I posted my first video, and my first video got 300,000 views, and I was like, oh, TikTok will do that too, though.
Yeah, right.
They suck you in. They want to do that. And so I was like, this is really interesting. And I just started posting, and it organically grew over, about 6 months. I had 20,000 followers or something like that. I did not touch any other platform.
Yeah.
I felt safe on TikTok. It still felt like nobody knew I was there.
That was your little community.
Yeah, and my friends didn't know about it yet. Nobody really knew.
Wow.
And then I went viral,
Yeah.
and you go viral, and it's in the news, and it's everywhere, and it kind of felt like, okay, I think this got away from me a little bit.
Yeah, right? You were like, this was my little corner of the internet, and now
Yeah.
it's stretching further and further.
Yeah.
And what was the video that went viral?
I shared how much I pay for daycare.
Oh, my goodness.
I said, one of my friends now, a fellow content creator, is in Canada, and she said, we have universal childcare. This is how much we pay. How much do you pay for childcare? And so I was just in the parking lot at Marshall's.
Yeah.
And I was like, you know what? I pay $5,000 for childcare. And I talked about the cost breakdown, and it just blew up. And then my response to that video blew up, and it just became this conversation. And it's part of my niche now, but I wasn't expecting it, obviously.
Totally.
And also a video I was proud to go viral for because I thought it needed attention anyways. But yeah, it was really interesting.
That is so cool. And have you always been, you said you were a social media lurker. Have you, growing up, were you somebody that was interested in social media? I grew up in the era of MySpace.
Sure.
That was way back when.
Yeah.
Is that something that you've always used and been involved with? Or is this kind of a new avenue for you?
No, I had social media because I went to school for broadcast journalism. So part of that was figuring out what social media was, how it worked. And so when I graduated college, I moved to Los Angeles. I worked in entertainment, and I had to maintain my boss's Instagram account and their Twitter, and I had my own. But once I left LA, I kind of just stopped and didn't really participate in that way anymore. If you went to my own personal page, I barely posted. But yeah, I was very familiar with the platforms. I was very into YouTube when everybody else was in 2012.
Yep.
And so I was always very in the know of social media. I just wasn't participating in it in the same way. So I was consuming it. I was a big time consumer, but I wasn't using it
Totally.
the same way.
I feel like that's very similar to what happened with me. I was a consumer of content. I used to work in the back end of influencer marketing at an agency, and I was seeing all of these content creators, and I was just consuming content all the time that I was interested in it. And then similarly to you, once I had a viral moment, I was kind of what let me pour into this and see what it can be.
Yeah.
But I don't know, I started following you. I saw a video when it was perfect timing. I was moving in with my boyfriend, and you were talking a lot about, household responsibilities. And one of the coins the terms that you have kind of coined that I look to you for is the mental load. And I want to talk about kind of the mental load of it all. Explain it to me at a really high level for people that, might not follow you but are listening or watching the podcast. What is the mental load?
Sure. So I didn't come up with the term, but I think I brought it to social media in a more meaningful way than maybe it has been in the past. Because I think what's often happened with the mental load is it was this term that people heard and didn't understand.
Yeah.
And what I think I've been able to do on social media is help people articulate what it is. And that's really what I try to do, which is we hear the term mental load and everybody goes, what does that mean? Like, what is that even? It feels too clinical. It doesn't make sense. And so I tell people, I like to think about the mental load as a running to-do list in your brain of everything you need to know, do, and remember for your life. So it's remembering you have a deadline at work. It's remembering you need ketchup. It's remembering a gift for your mom on her birthday. It's all of those things. It's knowing that your son blew through his pants at school and you need to buy new ones.
Yeah.
It's being the person who knows that you need to replenish the diapers, right? It's just running to-do lists in your brain, and it just never gets shorter. And I think that's the part that people often miss, which is, you know, you check something off your list, laundry, for example, and when I do that, I see my son has ruined his favorite shirt. I remember we have baseball on Saturday and I forgot to wash the uniform. And so I've added new things to my list.
Yeah.
And so that is how I think about the mental load. Some people also might think about it like the open tabs on your computer that you can never close because you will forget them. And oftentimes I talk about it in relation to marriage or relationships and motherhood, but everyone has it. I mean, I think about we were just talking about our siblings before we came on, and I think about it with them where we're like, who's buying the gift for mom? Can you Venmo me?
Yeah.
Did you get a card? And
it's even as simple as feel like as like checking in with each of your siblings, like knowing which one, like being, you know, I'm the youngest of 4, and I feel like I always want to like divert my attention equally to everybody and like check in on their lives, and it's like, even that is part of that, which is interesting. I think I started following you because I was moving in with my boyfriend, and I was like, I need to figure out a way to dictate who does what and like how. I've never lived with someone before.
Totally.
He was moving into my house that I had bought, and so I love how open you are about, you know, the cost of childcare and, you know, the mental load of living with someone else and marriage. And you've been very open about your marriage and childcare without revealing too much information about like who the people are involved and anything like that. I think that that's so admirable because a lot of people look at content as like, you have to be fully transparent. You have to share every single thing. Like, to a fault.
Right.
And I really value that you don't do that. Is that's something that's intentional?
Very intentional. I think when I think about my kids in particular, I feel pretty strongly that kids shouldn't be in content for many different reasons. But one, they can't consent to it.
Yep.
2, you know, I don't know how I would feel now as an adult knowing my entire childhood was online. I don't think I'd love that as a person, having this kind of digital footprint I didn't create. I don't even like looking at my old Facebook photos, right? So
same.
I can't imagine what my kids would feel. But I also think privacy-wise, right? When I go out in public, and I'm sure this happens to you, and people notice me and say, hey, Paige, or they come talk to me, they don't know my kids' names. And it would be weird if they did, right? I think my kids would feel weird if somebody was like, hey, so-and-so.
Well, it's like it's the parasocial relationship of it all. Like people coming up to, you know, it happens sometimes to like my parents because they'll be in my videos and they're troopers about it. But imagining it happening to a child is a little odd.
It's even odd for them when people do it to me. They'll say, oh, how do they know you? Or what are they talking about, Mom?
Exactly.
And that's weird for them. I can't imagine if somebody came up to them. And I have friends in this space who said, you know, when I stopped showing my kids was when my husband was at the grocery store without me, and somebody came up to him and our child and started talking like they knew them.
Yeah.
And it made them very uncomfortable. And so that's super intentional. And then same thing with my partner. I mean, he doesn't have social media this way. He doesn't want it this way. And it's really, at the end of the day, my platform, unlike maybe some other influencers, is not really about me. It's about ideas. And I might share my lived experience to help kind of paint a picture of what that might look like with the mental load or childcare. But I share these things because I know so many people resonate with them.
Yeah.
So it's not about me. It's not about my kids. It's not about my husband. And I end up on the wrong side of the internet all of the time. I think as a woman with strong opinions, that will happen to you. And people try to weaponize every little thing about you.
Yeah.
And so I don't want that happening to my husband, to my children. Somebody found pictures of my kids and put them on Twitter. And I felt so violated.
Yeah.
And
rightfully so.
Yeah. And I can't imagine what that would have felt like if I'd already kind of put out a ton about them. And people were weaponizing that online.
Yeah.
I just don't feel comfortable with it.
Do you get blowback from people about not sharing that part of your life? Or people really respect your boundaries? Your followers, the people that know you at your core, they really respect that and they don't like push you to share more about that?
I actually think the tides are kind of turning in this space, and most people prefer you not to show your kids. So I would say more often than not, I get comments that are I love how Paige is a mom creator and we've never seen her kids.
Yeah.
I really admire that. And so, I mean, I feel good about my decision anyways, but I do think my followers in particular have never once asked to see they've never once asked to see my kids. Sometimes they ask to see my husband and I'm like, no. I think his arm was in a thing once and somebody was like, that's not what I pictured. I was like, it's just an arm.
I know, right? Like, does it have a tattoo? Like,
it's tattoos, yeah. And so people are like, your husband has tattoos? I'm like, yeah, I don't know. What
do you want me to tell you about
who you think he is? But yeah, I mean, I think my followers understand and it's interesting. I think everybody wants a level of privilege to like your life. And so sometimes they'll say, you need to talk about this or you need to talk about that.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, we don't have to talk about anything.
I know. That's the thing that's hard with social media is that people feel like they have a right to dictate what you post on social media, where I'm like, this is not like if my content isn't serving you anymore, like this isn't an airport, you don't need to announce your departure, get out of here. So I think it's really interesting. I do like how you said the tides are turning because I came to growth on Instagram in the era of like the typical mommy blogger, where, you know, they're posting, you know, here's my kid at 1 month, here's him at 2 months, 3 months, 4 months, and so on and so forth. And the content that I creating was mocking influencers and influencer culture. And I think a lot of people now are kind of seeing the long-term effects of influencing and how it can affect children, and they're scaling back and starting over in a way. I see a lot of people online that are like, I'm no longer showing my children, and they're getting a lot of blowback.
I know.
What is your response to, like, if a content creator was to come to you and say, like, I want to scale back, I did this in the past and I'm not comfortable with it anymore, like, how do I deal with blowback? What would you say to that?
I mean, sometimes I just ignore it.
Yeah.
I mean, your opinion matters to an extent, right? So I have a really close relationship with my followers in the sense that I try to answer as many DMs as I can, and I try to be engaged in the community because I think that's one of the things people want is this kind of reciprocal relationship. And so as much as I can, I do that. But at the end of the day, I cannot serve 250,000 people in the way that they all want.
No.
That's just not humanly possible. And so if you're getting blowback, but you feel really good about your decision, then that's enough. And you don't have to explain it to anyone else. I would say, I think for some people, you know, they will start to slowly change, right? And so when you do that, you can kind of evolve and people just evolve with you. But also at the end of the day, your content is always reaching new eyes. And so, yes, you want to remain, you know, with your following, but it's okay to change and to attract new followers who align with those values.
Yeah.
And so there are some times where people are going to leave. I mean, do you ever look at your follower account? I'm losing followers every day.
Same.
Every day.
It's going up, it's going down. It's like, I've been plateaued for like the past, like, probably 6 months because somebody will come and somebody will go.
Yeah.
It's the nature of the business. And I feel like, too, the more transparent you are about your life, some people just don't relate to it anymore. And some people, and I think a lot of times too, I see this trope online with content creators, and you know, they reach a level of success and they're no longer relatable. And people are like, they moved and they're driving this car, and I loved them when they were in this line of work. And I think a lot of people just don't relate to that anymore and are like, all right, I'm out of here. And then other people are like, I want to see this aspirational life, and they'll go to that. That's just an example. It's just different strokes for different folks. It's like a real part of this industry. And
yes. And I think to that comment, like the relatable portion, I don't know if you remember that trend. There was a girl doing like followers I used to love and now I hate. And, and oftentimes it was, oh, they're no longer authentic or they're no longer relatable and they don't share as much of their life.
Yeah.
And I think oftentimes that's because when you reach a certain level, you realize that people will use your life against you, right? They'll comment and say mean things about something you've said in the past, or they'll often bring up my husband's line of work for some reason in my comment section. And I'm like, this is why I don't say stuff. This is why I don't say personal things about myself, because I don't really need strangers using it in a way that it wasn't intended for. And not saying the bulk of people do that. They don't. But I do think when people reach certain levels, and I'm not even there, but certain levels on social media, it's like a celebrity. They don't want to tell you about their day-to-day life. I was just at a creator conference, and this woman was like, I never post in real time because I worry about my safety. And so I will post days later about a trip. And I never want someone to know kind of where I am in real time because there's a level that is a bit scary, right? Where people feel like they are deserving access to you. And so I understand why they become less relatable, but at the same time, if you don't want to follow anymore, then
you don't
find someone else who's willing to share.
I know. And there are so many people that are willing to share. I feel like content creation right now is a booming business. Like, when did you, after these moments of virality, when did you kind of start saying, oh, I can take this more seriously, I can monetize this, and I can use it to build a platform where I have these things that I'm passionate about and can talk about them in a real way?
Sure. So I don't think I monetized for a year, which is still pretty quick, I feel like. Especially I was working full time. I didn't have any intention to build it into a business. And so monetization came organically. Brands started to reach out, and I started to dabble in paid partnerships. And I would say I didn't start making money in a meaningful way for about a year and a half. And then I think it was 6 months later I got laid off. So
you were kind of forced.
Yeah, I mean, I was thankful to be making money, and I was thinking through what would this look like if I did this full time? Because at a certain point it becomes a full-time job. I mean, I was working around the clock doing content, doing my full-time job, filming partnerships, and trying to figure out what I wanted it to be. And when I got laid off, I said, you know, the money's there. I could probably make more if I figure out how to do it right and a way that feels aligned to me and no longer just like whatever comes. I became a lot more intentional. And so, but I would say the platform itself, the messaging, the mission, all of that, when I went viral that first time, I felt a real sense of responsibility to the women who started following me, and I became very intentional about what I was posting. So my posting was always very intentional. I knew what messages I wanted to be sharing. I knew why I wanted to share them. I would say in regards to building a business, that didn't come till later. I didn't do that with the intention of making money, but once I started making money, I wanted to become even more intentional about, okay, how is the content aligned with building a business? Yeah,
and so you have a very specific strategy that you follow when it comes to creating content and posting content. What does that look like in terms of like your work day? Like, is there a specific, because are you doing this full time now? And how long have you been doing it full time?
6 months.
Yeah. And how's it going?
It's good.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's good. I mean, I think you probably feel this, but being your own boss is a little strange in the sense that I've worked a real like corporate job for 10 years and had deliverables and deadlines and a steady paycheck. And so I don't love the part of the variable income every single month. So that part I don't love. But I would say in regards to my day-to-day life, it's so much more flexible than a normal corporate job. And with 4 kids, I need flexibility. And so I love it. But I still try to work a 9 to 5. So I drop my kids off, and I actually block my apps outside of those hours. So I'm trying really hard not to be so in them, because it's easy to be when you're a content creator. It's easy to always be working and thinking and posting and commenting. And so
I think it's good not to like, I compare myself, and the comparison is obviously the thief of joy. Everybody knows this, but you see other people and content, and it kind of affects what content you create. I think it's really smart to kind of just block the outside noise. I feel like you're really good at doing a lot of that. I have to. I mean, my therapist is always telling me, she's like, nobody is supposed to get this much feedback about themselves. It's so true.
Good or bad. We're not supposed to look at our faces all day. We're not supposed to see all these comments about ourselves all day. And so, you know, I'm trying to be very intentional about stepping away from that. But I work from 9 to 5 typically. I do a lot of podcasts because of the topic I cover. So I speak to a lot of journalists. So I'm a little bit of a different content creator where I'm kind of talking on these bigger picture ideas, not necessarily selling you a car seat, for example. I'm selling ideas and commenting on different things, whether it's the news or politics. And so I spend a lot of time at conferences, speaking to journalists, doing podcasts. And so that's a lot of my day. And then creating content, which just takes a lot of time and energy. And then also building what this looks like offline. Speaking, whether it's a book or whatever it might be. It's a really interesting industry where I think people see our videos for 90 seconds, but there's usually so much more going on behind the scenes, and that's the stuff that takes so much time. I can film a video in 5 minutes.
You're better than me.
I've got it down,
Yeah.
but I mostly just speak to a camera. I don't edit too much. I'm starting more, but that I can do quickly. It's all the back end stuff. I think that takes most of my time.
Yeah, and I feel like too, a lot of people see content creation and they only see the post, they see the stories. They're not necessarily seeing like the script that went into that post that you had to write. Like a content creator is really, they're a writer, a producer, an editor. They're the talent.
Yes.
They're doing a lot of different things.
Taxes.
Yeah, no, literally.
Taxes.
I mean, the accounting of it all is its own, 9 to 5. I need that. We were just talking about all the different hats you wear as a content creator, but you're also a mom.
Yes.
You're also a partner, your husband. What does that look like for them? Like, do they understand your role in the world of content? Or I'm sure your partner does. Yeah. But your children who are not on social media, or you don't talk about them on social media in the sense of like, here's their name, XYZ. You talk about them and you reference them in things that they are going through or do. Do they know that, or are they just fully not tuned in?
I do not film when they're home. And if I am filming when they're home, I'm in my car, away from them.
Okay.
So they might know that I'm going to film something, but they don't quite understand what it is or what I'm saying. And so they have an idea that I live in a phone, essentially. They know that people know who I am, but they don't really understand what that means.
Yeah.
My daughter will joke, Mom's on TikTok. And I'm like, what is that? She's like, I don't know. And I'm like, right. But
I mean, it's good that she doesn't know that.
No, and they're young. I mean, my oldest is only 8, so my kids are still very young. They don't have social media or their own iPhones or tablets. They don't have any of that. And so they really don't know. But I also don't film in front of my husband because I'm embarrassed. And
I'm the same way.
I can't do it.
He has to leave the room.
Yeah, I'm like, you got to get out of here.
Yeah.
Even if he walks in, I'm like, oh no, get out.
Because then you just get in your head and you're like, why? What are they thinking? I'm saying something weird. Like, even though I know I'm confident in like what I'm saying.
Yeah, he's like, 10 million people saw that video, but you couldn't film it in front of me. And I'm like, no,
Absolutely.
never in a million years. I could not. And so, I mean, they know, but I don't think my husband understood the experience probably until I went viral, and some of his friends were sending him, they were like, hey, you good?
Yeah, right.
And he's like, yeah. And he's like, I just didn't realize how kind of intense it can be online, especially if you go viral. And so I think he's got a better idea of it now, but it's still this weird industry. Like, people are like, what'd you do today? And I'm like, honestly, it's strange to explain.
And it's also still like, this industry is still like in its infancy. And I think one of my favorite things about this industry is that it's like women run, women owned. Like, I would say 90% of the content creators are women, 90% of the people working behind the scenes in talent management, in agency work, they're all women. Do you think that is a part of the reason why people kind of look down at content creation and influencing as a job? Because
absolutely. Well, if you even think about like the large male creators, the podcasters, the YouTubers, all of them, nobody really talks down to them in the same way they talk down to a famous influencer who's making tons of money, right? And I'll get comments all the time in my videos, this isn't a real job.
Yeah.
Well, then why am I getting paid like it's a real job?
If it's the money's real.
Right. The money is real. And to be honest, isn't that kind of everyone's dream, is to have a job they really love, a job that doesn't require a 40, 50-hour week of grinding in an office and making the same money? Why wouldn't we want that? If anything, we should applaud that and say, like, okay, well, how do we get more people to have careers like this in and outside of influencing? I feel very strongly that we shouldn't have to work to the bone to be successful. And if you find a way to do it, but also every single woman I know in this industry, I'm in a group chat with 20 other creators, mom creators. We just went on a trip together.
Oh, I love that.
They're the smartest women. They are so smart. They are savvy. They are making insane business decisions. And all day long, they're talking about how to optimize, how to build, how to grow, how to elevate their messaging, whatever it might be. What team are you working with? Do you have a connection, right? It is no different than working in a corporate field, right? We are networking, we are talking, we are sharing information, we are elevating one another. And I think we do talk down on it because it's a woman-run business. But it's so interesting because it's a very lucrative business. Brands are spending so much money on influencer marketing for a reason. And part of that's twofold. One, women are creating this content, but two, women are consuming it, and they're the consumers. Women manage, like, I think it's 85% of all household spending. So if we know that and we know they're consuming this content, this is the marketing flywheel. This is how you market. You're not watching a commercial. My kids have never seen a commercial.
No,
they're like,
literally.
what is this? Now that Disney Plus has them, they're like, what's happening?
Yeah, right?
So we ignore that fact. We oversimplify it. We make light of it when in reality, this is the new advertising. This is where people are spending their dollars. And so we should treat it that way. It is a big business. And I don't know if anybody has ever said this to you, but somebody said to a friend of mine, they had so many views on a video, and they said, you have more views on that video than Jimmy Kimmel gets for his show.
It's so interesting you say that, because when I was recording either last week or the week before, I was talking about how just like explaining the views and what that looks like and whatnot, and comparing it to like a television network. I use HGTV as an example because I'm constantly watching HGTV.
It's always on at the nail salon.
Yes, always. And I was just like researching the viewership of it. It's like 600,000 people view it during its primetime hour. And I was comparing it to myself. I have like just over 600,000 followers. And so would you rather spend money on an ad spot for a commercial on HGTV where it might not land with the right person, or would you rather have a hyper-targeted audience and make sure that the person you want to see that is going to see it if they're invested and engaged with the person that's creating that content? So it's an interesting comparison that you made, because this really is the new wave of advertising in general. And I think that it's great for women, but also specifically for moms who have the flexibility to create content at home. You know, you don't need anything fancy to start doing this. It's so corny and cheesy, but like the simplest way to start making money from this is to start posting.
I literally don't even use a tripod. People are like, what's your setup? And I'm like, I have an Owala water bottle, and I put it on my counter, and I lean my phone against it. And that's the setup.
That's about as simple as it can get. I'm like,
that's the setup, and maybe an Alex Earl clip-on light. Right? That might be it. You really don't need much. No. And people ask me that. How do you create so much content? How do you do this? Some of it's just getting over yourself, and also I think feeling really good about what you're creating, right? I feel really passionate about the things I talk about. I could talk about them all day long, and I do. I talk about them on podcasts and in news articles. I could talk about this every day. And so if you feel that way, if you feel like you could do this every day, then talk about that thing, whatever it is. That's why there's people who are makeup creators or mom creators or whatever it might be. But you can also evolve. That's the other thing. You can evolve as you go. My content doesn't look the same today as it looked a year ago.
Yeah, same.
And that's okay. And so I think it's one of those things where people are nervous to create content. I would also say it's not as simple. There's a lot of people online saying, just create content, you'll make money. No. You won't. You have to be engaging. You have to engage. You have to understand that this is a business. There's a way to win in it. And, you know, even in that group chat I was talking about, people are like, okay, what are your story views? What are your clicks? I never would have thought this was something that people thought about in this space.
And then you have to be like hyper analytical about like what all those look like and how to improve them and what that's going to be like. And I think too, I mean, having that community of the mom group chat, like you mentioned, I feel like is huge. I think everybody in this space is so willing to help each other because a year ago we were all at a different point than we are today. What do you think is the hardest part about being in this industry? It seems like a lot of it is opening your life to online and criticism, but for you specifically, what is it?
Yeah, for me, I think because of the things I talk about, not necessarily the childcare crisis, but the mental load is weirdly a divisive issue between men and women. And in a political world where there's a lot of talk about gender norms and traditional roles and all of the things, when I post about this topic where I share my own relationship story, sometimes it ends up on Twitter or somewhere. And, you know, very recently, I had just a horrible experience where, you know, the wrong side of the internet got it. I was not only receiving hate messages online, people were emailing me death threats, and I'm getting all this inbound, and that can feel really scary. It can feel really intense, and it's not normal, right? It's not normal to experience that in a job, to have that much coming at you without any kind of barrier.
There's no HR.
No HR, and nobody to stop it, right? It's just in your DMs, so you can shut those off. But then they found my email. But
then you're also neglecting all the community that does support you.
Exactly.
So it's hard.
Yeah. So that's my least favorite part, which is there's so many people who do resonate with the message, and having something like that happen can really kind of like suck the wind out of your sails. Not because you don't believe in it, just because nobody should experience anything like that. And so for me, whenever that happens, which unfortunately is like once every 6 months, I take a little bit of time and I just kind of recalibrate and maybe take time offline, but most often I don't. I just keep posting like normal and kind of ignore it. But that can be really hard. And I think for people who are not thick-skinned or just kind of self-assured enough, it can be really hard to be online. Because
and I think it's too like the community around you, having like a good
support system,
a good sense of self, knowing who you are, and also like my mom and dad and my boyfriend and all of that. You have to just have a community of people. And I will tell you, like, for me, I see a hate comment for myself, and I think about that way more than I do all the positive things that get sent to me, or like, you made my day, you entertained me, you made me laugh, whatever it is. I always think about the negative one, and I'm trying to work through, okay, like there is always going to be like that shitty person that just is going to be way louder than all of the positive people. So it's something that I have to work on, even now, having done it for 3-4 years. It never gets easier, but it's just, you have to rework your mind a little bit, I guess.
Yes, and use your block button whenever you want. I mean, I block people all day long, and I think everybody should do that. There should be no reason not to. If somebody's saying something mean, you wouldn't have them in your real life.
So true.
Also, go touch some grass. I think, we can be, that's why I block it now. Because I'm like, I just need to go live my real life and not be on my phone and not worry about what people are saying about me online, and just go have dinner with some friends. And be with people in real life and in community with them. And that, I think, also kind of recalibrates you to show back up as your authentic self. Because if you're too online, if you want to be a creator and you're too online, then you're no longer relatable either, because you're not living your life. You're not actually experiencing life in the way that everyone else is. And so I really make a strong intention to do that every day if I can. And so that, I think, also is what kind of keeps you even in this space, if you can.
Yeah, it's a hard space to be level-headed in. And I mean, knowing all of the like hate comments or whatever it is that you're receiving, which is crazy. Stop doing that if you're leaving those.
I know, come on, guys.
Freaking weirdos. What do you think is the thing that the internet gets the most wrong about you? That people on the internet like perceive you in a wrong way versus who you really are?
It's funny. I think a lot of people think I'm incredibly self-confident and self-assured, and that I am not a people pleaser. And in my real life, I work so hard not to be a people pleaser, but I am, right? Like, you're going to mess up my coffee, I'm just going to drink it.
Same.
But online, I have no problem really kind of standing my ground and saying what I feel and sticking up for people. And it's interesting because I can do that. I can do that online, but in my real life, if I'm out to dinner and it's cold, I'm like, oh, well,
that's fine.
I'll just eat it.
No, I'm the same way.
And so it's funny because I think when people meet me in real life and they learn that about me, they're like, oh, I would have just thought you were much more aggressive in real life and direct, and I'm not. But at the same time, I try very hard to be myself. I was with a friend at a conference. I had just met her. I say friend because we were online friends.
Yes, of course.
And I had just met her in real life, and I came back from the bathroom, and she was like, I was just talking about you. And I was like, oh, God, hopefully good.
Saying?
And she said, no, you're just exactly who you are online. And I was like, well, that's a compliment, because I think we all try.
Yeah, totally.
We try. You can't be 100% your authentic self because you're speaking to a camera. It's a little weird.
It's not its own reality show.
No. But I do try to be myself as much as I can be, but I'm just a real people pleaser. I'm eldest daughter, I'm just working on it.
I understand it. My sister is the same exact way. We were talking about both of us being, one of four before the show. And I think it's interesting, like, my family is my biggest support system. Like, they are all like my biggest cheerleaders. They were sharing my content, like sending it to all their friends, all their whatever. But when you were talking earlier about how like you went viral, you didn't tell anybody about it.
No.
How's your like family now reacted to obviously all of your successes and your growth online? I mean, it's crazy to do all this. And you said you were posting in like 2022, 2023, like 2 to 3 short years. And now you have this booming business. Like, how do they feel about it?
Yeah, I think it's interesting to people because they don't quite understand what it is still, right? Especially if they're not in this industry. My uncle's a lawyer, and he's like, I don't get it. I'm like, I know. I don't either.
You're like, I'm still learning,
Me too. But it's funny. I mean, I think as they started to find it, then they started to, some of my girl cousins were sharing it, and I think, oh, that was nice that they shared it. And my friends will do that, which is great. But I think it was one of those things where the very first year, like it was almost a full year. I went to Thanksgiving with my entire extended family, and everybody's like, Paige, and I'm like, okay, let's talk about it. So it's funny. They're very supportive, but I also still think to everyone in my real life, it's just my job. And so they don't think about it in any way other than, oh, what do you do for work this week?
Yeah.
Right.
Like, were you traveling? Were you on a podcast?
Exactly. Like, where were you? What were you doing? Oh, that sounds cool. What was the purpose of the conference? Stuff like that.
Normal things.
Yeah. Normal stuff. And I think that's the great thing about family, which is they will elevate you and they will share and cheer you on. And then they will also just
humble you.
And sometimes text you and be like, yo, Paige.
Yeah. Right.
What was this video?
Calm down.
Yeah. So I just think it's one of those things where that's why I love having a big extended family and a lot of siblings too, is because they just keep you,
really
they'll bring
grounded.
You right back down.
Really grounded.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I wanted to talk to you about, because obviously some of the conversation topics that you talk about are a little bit sensitive. You talk about like marriage and motherhood and childcare a lot. When it comes to talking about your marriage in a really open way, what was that conversation like with your husband? Because I know one of the videos that I was like, when you agreed to come on the podcast, I was like, oh, I really want to talk to Paige about this, was that you were considering divorce. And you shared that with your audience. And that's got to be a big thing to talk about before you actually hit post.
You would think.
Yeah, you would think.
So my husband and I have always been very open with my friends, with my family, about things that we're going through, right? So in my life, I've experienced infertility. We adopted. We had all these things, and I was never really quiet about them. I was happy to talk about them because I personally am of the belief that we keep so much close to our chest in our real lives and don't share it with our friends and don't share it with our family, and it leaves us feeling really isolated, right? So I've always been big about talking about hard stuff. And so in doing so in my real life, I remember I had a pregnancy loss, and I shared about it. And then a year later, an acquaintance was like, Paige, can I talk to you? And they had gone through something similar and just had heard me say it to a friend or something. And so I've always felt very strongly about talking about these things. And so when we struggled in our relationship and came out on the other side, I started to talk about it more. And the first time I shared it on social media, it went viral, which I didn't expect.
Yeah.
And it went viral really fast. And my husband had just taken the kids for a walk, and I posted it, and he came back, and I was like, hey, I posted something. I did not expect it to be this large. And at this time, I only had like 30,000 followers. So I was like, I did not expect this to be viral in any way. Do you want me to take it down? I just asked. I was like, it's only been up an hour. Do you want me to take it down? I can take it down. And he was like, no, I don't. It's fine. He's like, I don't care. And so that's the thing. It's like, I think a lot of people think that my husband is mad or that I am speaking poorly about him or our relationship, when in reality, what I'm trying to do and he supports is bring awareness to a very common issue that many couples, especially heterosexual couples, experience between men and women. And in sharing that, I've been able to build this community of women who say, me too. And so what do I do? How do I fix this? I want my marriage to work. And at the end of the day, that's our story, which is, yes, I considered what it would be like to get divorced. We didn't. We worked through it. We found a way to partner together, to find more equity, to build a stronger relationship that is better than it was 3 years ago. And isn't that what we're all hoping to do when we go through hard times? And so, for him in particular, he knows that I'm passionate about this. He also knows this is kind of part of the business where I don't share about him or a specific fight we have or any of those things, but I will share about like the overarching ideas of what happened. And so I would never get into the nitty-gritty of our relationship, but the ideas are very common. And when I was in them, him and I felt like, what do we do? Like, we're running in circles. We can't fix this problem. And so he knows what it was like to walk through that too. And so he's very supportive of that. And I think sharing that story, which I've shared a couple times now, and for some reason it always goes viral. And I think it's because so many people relate to it, and it's a story not a lot of people tell. Yeah,
it's super honest and vulnerable, and it leaves you open to that criticism. And I feel like you are a very good sounding board for advice, like to your friends, to your family. Do you find that like you've always been like that? Like, do a lot of people come to you for advice now, seeing you on social media, and are like, what do I do about this? Like in your real life?
more so my friends will text me and be like, for some content.
Yeah.
Here's a little story. A little bit, I think, I'm sure you experience this, but I mean, my middle sister calls me like 7 times a day, so we're always talking and always connecting. And I think, I'm one of the first of my friends to have kids, and I got married in my 20s, so I was a little bit younger for New England ages. And so, I think so. But I think also, it's just, I was thinking about the vulnerability part is why people will come to me, which is, do you remember on, I think it was Real Housewives, where Heather Dubrow was like, he said the D word.
Yeah.
And it was like, and she's like, divorce. And I think that is it, though. It's like, even uttering the words is like a no. You shouldn't say that. When in reality, so many of us have experienced this or thought about it. And so I think saying the things that nobody else is saying will make other people feel comfortable to talk to you because they're like, okay, I'm not going to say this out loud, but she will.
Yeah.
And so maybe she is willing to listen and lend an ear. And so I try to do that in real life. I try to do that to people in my DMs as much as I can. I also say, I am also not a therapist.
Yeah.
I can't give you advice. I can be here.
I can tell you my experiences, but
I'm not licensed.
It's not a one size fits all thing too.
No.
Every relationship is going to be different, as well as I like love the content that you create.
Thank you.
It's helped. Like, me and my boyfriend will sometimes watch it, and he's like, "Wait, am I doing this? Like, are these things that I do to you?" And I'm like, "Sometimes," and then it creates dialogue, and I feel like a lot of your conversation is centered around creating dialogue and talking about things that might be a little bit more taboo or a little bit more not as frequently discussed, like the childcare costs. One thing I'm curious about, I'm seeing this wave on social media where a lot of people feel inclined to talk more openly about politics. I feel like maybe 3-4 years ago, nobody was sharing who they voted for or bills they supported or whatever it is. I think it's amazing that people are opening up and talking about this. But I feel like it also relates to you in a specific way because it's so related to the core of childcare and motherhood in America. Was that something you were worried about talking about politics because it is so divisive?
No, because I feel really confident in what I believe in. And I think inherently everything I talk about is political in the sense that even the mental load, right? Sharing domestic labor at home with our partners. For women in particular, this work falls to us disproportionately because of things like the lack of paid leave, the lack of affordable childcare. And those are systemic things. Those are policy things. And so until those things are more stable and funded and hopefully subsidized, women will continue to be in a position where they kind of bear this unequal burden to men. And so it's impossible for me to talk about the mental load without also saying, okay, but this happens because of this. And so, like that, I try very hard in everything that I talk about to make sure it all kind of connects back and say, your husband not doing the dishes, sure, that we can address that. But this larger issue of how we got here and societal conditioning, all of this stuff, it's so much bigger than any of us. And so we have to care. We have to think about these things. And so when I talked about politics, first off, I was surprised people were surprised. People were like, I didn't know this was your thoughts. And I'm like, okay. Yeah. I thought I presented a certain way, but I guess not. And so when you're explicit, you might lose some followers, you might gain some followers, you might change some minds, which I think I've done, or even at least opened up a dialogue, which again, that's what I'm trying to do is open up conversation. I try very hard not to shame anyone, but to educate and bring awareness. And so, if you care about the cost of childcare, which the average American family does, then you should care about policies. And so I will say, the more that I've created a business, the more that I'm aware of the fact that brands don't always love politics. And so if brands don't love politics, what does that mean for my business? And they like some politics, not other politics, in regards to kind of, everybody believes in the childcare crisis, pretty much. Everybody rallies around that. But say gender equity, for example, people don't, maybe that's not always politically aligned with brands. And so it's something you have to consider, which is, do I feel strong enough about talking about this thing to potentially jeopardize partnerships and my revenue? And for me, I've always felt really confident in what I'm doing. And my manager, she's like, as a manager, I will always tell you to do less on the politics. She's like, as a person who loves your content and what you do, she's like, I will never tell you not to do those things. And so I think that is something for me, you have to make choices. And I think we see that across different kind of creators, which is like some are, and it's not every video, right?
No.
It's like 1 in every 20 videos,
No.
but they're saying something because they feel passionate about a topic, and I think that's great, right? We want people to feel like they can use their communities for good, if possible, and to create dialogue. And I think, but it's tricky waters, right? It's tricky.
I think a lot of times people too, they don't necessarily use context clues. Yeah. They're fine with following you if you don't say stuff, and if you think that they can like put you in this box of like not talking about XYZ. But the minute you do, they feel like almost like betrayed, that like this isn't what I signed up for.
Yeah.
And again, it's like what we were talking about earlier with people who, I'm unfollowing and I don't like that you're pivoting or whatever it is. I think people just don't really use context clues. Like I look at myself and I'm not talking about, my content is more entertainment,
right,
and, funny, hopefully. And I'm not talking about, really serious issues all the time. But if I feel inclined to talk about, things that affect my life or my friends or my family, I'm absolutely going to. I think a lot of people forget that, like, I'm a gay man living in Massachusetts.
Exactly.
Like, I'm 99% of the people in my demographic are going to lean more liberal. So I always get like, I'm like, do you really think that I'm a MAGA? Like what?
Yeah,
that's crazy. So I think it's funny that people pick and choose what to support and how to support and not to read certain context clues, I guess, online.
Yeah, totally. And I think one of the things too is, you can consume my content because you love learning about the mental load, and you can swipe past another video. If you want to engage with it, if you want to learn, if you want to understand my perspective, great. If you don't, like, you can just scroll, and the next time you see a mental load video, like, come on in,
exactly.
right? So I think that's the other thing. It's like, you can take what you need and leave what you don't. And I don't need to be everything for you. Yeah. And nothing can be.
No,
right? Even
you
your
can
favorite
find other
TV
people.
show.
You can find other people to fill your cup that fit specific topics that you want to hear from.
Yes, and there's days where you scroll past your favorite creator, just not because of anything, just because you're like, whatever, I don't want to watch that video today. It's really nothing. And so I think at the end of the day, that parasocial relationship can be a bit strange, but I mean, the context clues typically are there. And I think I had a friend who's like, I just microdose it once in a while just to cleanse, you know?
I like that, honestly. I feel like microdosing is the perfect way to explain like what I've been trying to do. And it's hard because, like you said, like this is a business at the end of the day. And, and there are brands that don't want to get into too many taboo topics, even though these topics shouldn't be taboo or controversial in any way. But it's interesting to look at the way that politics is now influencing social media and pop culture, and they're all connected now.
Yes. It's all
cool.
connected.
Yeah.
You can't really walk through the world without engaging in politics.
No.
Not in 2025. So, if that's the case, then it's no surprise more creators are talking about it.
Yeah. I want to do a quick little rapid fire with you about internet culture, pop culture in general. I know you mentioned the Housewives, so we can.
But I'm not avid on the Housewives.
No. But we could. But there's a few. I always got to throw my Bravo in there in some way, shape, or form. So we already talked a little bit about social media and children and your take on that and what you personally do. But what is a general social media pet peeve that you have about content creation, or whether it's about, specific apps that either are blowing up that you don't necessarily like? Like, what is your social media pet peeve if you had to choose one?
I don't like the couples accounts that make like rage baity skits on purpose to like make people mad, where it's like a husband doing something bad and the wife getting mad, and it's all just a skit.
And the phone is like propped up in the corner and nobody sees it.
Yeah, and it's all just rage bait. I don't love that because I think, it just sucks people into a conversation that's not real. And so, I know why they do it, but I don't like that. That one gets me.
I totally understand that.
Yeah.
On the flip side of that, who is one of your favorite people to follow online right now? Whether it's an emerging creator that you think, should be blowing up soon, or like your tried and true comfort creator.
Yeah. I don't do comfort creators too much. Like, I'm a For You page scroller.
Really? Okay.
I'm not looking at my who I follow. I'm looking at the For You page on TikTok. I just want to laugh at the end of the day. But I would say, I really this is maybe not surprising. I really like accounts like Money with Katie, which I don't know if you follow her.
Yeah.
She's amazing, and it's personal finance, but she also has a great podcast, so I love what she does. There's another one here, Tina Cartwright. She's great. She's rebranding Motherhood. She's a little bit smaller. She's in Maine, so she's close here in New England. But yeah, I mean, I think I'm a person who tries to have a diversified feed. I try really hard to do that. So you'll go in mine and it'll be like a political video, and then the next one will be that guy trying to run same arm, same leg. Did you see that?
Yeah.
You know, like, and that's what I'm doing. Like, that's my content.
So that's like that's how you consume content.
Yes.
Like, I feel like there are creators that consume content that is like strictly within their niche, and then there's people like me. Like I'm 1 second like watching like the Tiki videos of like
that's a dog, right?
Of him being fostered and like crying, and then the next one is like, you know, a Real Housewives montage.
Yeah. No, I don't scroll Instagram at all. I feel like those reels just are not landing for me. Like if I'm
it's scary on the side of on an Instagram reel.
Yes, I'm a consumer of TikTok. Like if I'm consuming, it's TikTok, which is like when it almost got banned. I was like, I'm sad, not as a creator, but just as a consumer.
That's how I felt. 100%. I was like, what am I going to do?
Yeah, this is how I spend my time. Yes, exactly.
I mean, it would have been maybe a little healthier for me, but.
Well, you just block it for a couple hours a day.
Exactly. I know I should take that advice from you.
I'll give you the app.
What is your biggest piece of advice to aspiring content creators?
You know, I already said it, but I think focus in on what you care a lot about. And it doesn't have to be anything fancy. It could just be like mom hacks. It could be, I met this guy recently who makes amazing content on urban planning and is a big YouTuber and crushes on urban planning. And like, is that something I'm going to watch? No. Probably not. But there's a demographic for it. So if there's something you truly love to talk about and to do and to focus on, and you could do that all day long, create content on it. And it doesn't have to be fancy. Like we said earlier, I think that's also a number one tip. Don't make it a huge production. It could just be you in your car with your phone. But I also do think making sure it's recognizable is also my other big tip. If you follow me, I'm always in my kitchen, at my chair, in my car. I have like 3 spaces, and sometimes I'm somewhere else, but almost always people will say like, I know your kitchen so well because that's where I'm filming. I'm always in my kitchen. And so there was no intention behind that. I just had better lighting. But it is recognizable. So when people scroll, they see you and they go, oh, I know who this is. Even if I don't know her name, I know who this is because I know this kitchen.
Totally. And then my last question, since the podcast is called A Lot of You Have Been Asking, what is one question a lot of your followers have been asking you?
They all want to know how to talk to their partner about the mental load. That's the number one thing people come to me for, is how to have these conversations with their partner, how to change the dynamics. I think in sharing my story in a vulnerable way, they see that my husband and I worked on it and figured it out, at least for us. And so they want to know how. How did you do that? What do I need to do?
Give me the golden ticket.
Yeah, what books do I read? And so, that's the number one thing. And I think that's the beauty is also, I think my content hopefully gives them hope that you can change these things. And so I never mind getting that question, but it's the number one question I get.
Yeah. That's always so interesting. I love to know the questions that people get in their DMs. So I assumed it was something similar to that. But one of our little wrap up things that we always do over here is what you want your social media legacy to be. You know, you look back on things, 20, 30 years down the road. What do you hope your digital footprint leaves?
I hope that it leaves women in particular feeling more confident in articulating their needs within relationships and motherhood, in policy, right, with childcare, not just mothers, but parents in general. I really want to help people build happy, healthy, thriving relationships and families. And I think so many people are burnt out right now. And the reason I share what I do is because I actually believe it can be different. And so I hope that my content is not just bringing awareness, but can also bring about meaningful change for people in a positive way. And so whatever that looks like, who knows? But I think right now, just my goal is to equip as many people as possible with the language, just to describe what's happening and to have dialogue and conversation with other people. And if I did that, then I think I've done my job.
Totally. And what's next for you? Any fun projects you're working on? I know as content creators love to tease a secret project.
Yeah.
Is there anything you have in the works, things that you want to eventually achieve, what you see for yourself? What's going on there?
Yeah, I'm trying to do more offline.
Yeah.
So, more speaking, potentially a book or something like that. We'll see. There's a lot of things kind of up in the air, but I'm excited for what that looks like and building out more ways to reach people because I think social media is amazing, but our algorithms are what they are.
Exactly.
And so, we as content creators only have so much control, but part of what I'm excited about is bringing it to people who aren't on Instagram or on TikTok. And so there will be that, but I'm not going anywhere.
Yeah.
I will still be in your feed 6 out of 7 days a week.
Annoying the hell out of you. Do you take weekends off social media? Do you take Sundays off?
No, I always post on Sundays. Sundays is an amazing day for me.
Yeah.
On Instagram,
Yeah.
not on TikTok.
Yeah.
But I do try to take weekends off. If something, I am a fly by the seat of your pants kind of creator. So if I see something
that sparks you.
Yeah, that I cannot resist, I will post any day of the week, any time of day. I don't follow the rules.
Yeah.
I'm just like, it's midnight. Who cares? I'm posting this. But I do, I have 4 kids. My weekends are just birthday parties and baseball games.
Yep.
So I don't have a lot of time to post.
Okay. Good to know. Good to know. I feel like it's really important. I take weekends off of social media and just in general posting and consuming. So I love to hear when other creators do that as well and hear their little strategies.
Well, my Sunday post is pre-planned.
Yeah.
So, but I do post.
Yes, but you do log on to hit post.
I sure do.
Well, thank you so much for joining me today. I feel like anybody listening to this podcast, where can they find you? Sure. I know I already am following, so tell them where to follow you.
Yeah, so you can follow me everywhere. I am on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, Facebook at She's a Paige Turner. I am also on Substack. I have a website, she'sapageturner.com. I'm on LinkedIn.
Yeah,
LinkedIn. Don't sleep on LinkedIn, though,
connect
guys.
on LinkedIn.
There is a space for content creators there, so if you're not there, you should be.
I feel like I'm always scrolling that and seeing stuff.
Honestly, I've built a lot of business on LinkedIn, so
Wow.
I highly recommend it. But you can find me everywhere. It's Paige Connell or at She's a Paige Turner.
Amazing. Thank you for hopping on the podcast and
you.
chatting with me today. I really appreciate it. If you like this episode, a lot of you have been asking, you guys can rate the podcast on all podcast apps. I will see you back here, same time, same place next week. Thank you for listening, watching, whatever you were doing with the podcast. I appreciate it. Love you guys.